Good afternoon. Happy Tuesday, the 16th. We are snowed in here in Tennessee. If you've seen me the last couple of days, you've seen me via telehealth, and I'm glad we have that ability to switch over to telehealth to still reach out to everyone. I do apologize for the lighting. I'm not quite as bright as I normally am. The sun is going down, and my home office was not prepared for a live episode. But I didn't want to get behind on our book club because last week we started going over Fork in the Road by Dr. Jenn Unwin. It is the hopeful guide to food freedom. I hope you enjoyed the first couple of sessions, and or the first session, if you didn't get to watch it, please go back and watch last week's just so you can get caught up. There was a lot in that intro, and if you joined in, you remember there was a lot in that intro. I do hope you're out enjoying the snow. I did post pictures of myself and my kids so you can see, yes, I am a real human. I get out and play with my kids a lot, and I am so thankful that I'm able to do that, thankful that I'm healthy enough to get out there and do that. That's why I started on my weight journeys many years ago, because I wanted to be in my mid 40s and eventually in my 50s and in my 60s and still being out there with my kids and future grandkids living my best life. And that's what today was about. Did a little bit of telehealth and then got right into sledding and having fun in this rare amount of snow that we have here in Tennessee. So let's dive into chapter 1 of Dr. Jenn Unwin's book, Fork in the Road. This chapter is kind of the basis of, are you a carbohydrate addict or not? And there's a lot packed in here. So I encourage you to get your own book and read through it so that you can evaluate for yourself if you are a carbohydrate addict or not. What I loved is that the very first start from this chapter, under Bitten's comments, it says that addiction is a brain illness. And that is the absolute truth. Addiction is a brain illness and is controlled by chemicals and hormones and all kinds of things that once we've experienced that addictive substance, it become out of our control. So it's just not something that you can willpower yourself out of. It's not something you can just hope gets better. It is truly a brain illness. And that doesn't matter if it is a alcohol addiction, a drug addiction, a food addiction, a sex addiction, whatever it is that there's an addiction to, it's a brain illness. So I love this comment, the page 25. After being sober, I found myself hiding, lying, and sneaking with chocolate ice cream. And deep inside, I understood I'm a sugar addict and was one long before I became an alcohol, long before alcohol came in my life. In fact, sugar sensitized my reward center so that alcohol hit it harder. So, working in weight management, I have many, many clients who have experienced sobriety from drugs and alcohol. And it turns out that they transferred that addiction over to sugar. And we actually use a lot of the same tools that they used in their drug and alcohol sobriety in their sugar sobriety too. So it does go hand in hand. But did you notice that last part? In fact, sugar sensitized my reward center so that alcohol hit it harder. So being younger and having sugar repetitively hit that pleasure center or the brain, the endocannabinoid center of the brain, makes it more sensitized and just ready and primed for other addictions down the road, such as alcohol and drugs. And so I think that's something we need to think about when we're looking at how much sugar are we giving our kids, how much sugar are we giving our families. And I realize it's hard and they want it, but we only have one shot to make our kids healthy before they leave our house. And then after that, it's on them. So we really have to think about what we're doing to our kids from a young age, giving them sugar and things like that. All right, page 26, very top. Although there's doubt and debate among some researchers and clinicians as to whether sugar addiction is real, there are plenty of us who now embrace it as explaining our struggles. So I will admit that up front, there are many addiction specialists who do not recognize sugar and carbohydrate as an addictive substance, even though it fits all of the check mark boxes to me. Um, I just relate this back to things such as fibromyalgia, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, a lot of conditions that are now we know are very prominent. We have medical sound for them, and originally they were not thought of as illnesses. Well, this is the same thing. It's we're going to look back years from now, and no one's going to question it, just like no one questions fibromyalgia or any of these other conditions. So down bottom of the page under George's comments, some people call it food addiction. some sugar addiction. In this book, we're just going to refer to it as carbohydrate addiction. And if you remember from last week, the reason we're calling it carbohydrate addiction is all starches, all carbohydrates are just sugar molecules linked together. So it's a sugar and a sugar and a sugar and a sugar and a sugar. And the more higher the carb, the more sugar molecules are linked up with that. So it says most carbohydrate addicts struggle with food containing both sugar and carbohydrate. So the pure sugar substance and then carbohydrate that is sugar linked together in a more complex form and then broken down. But often this is put in conjunction with fat. Pure fats and pure protein are typically not problematic. And if you think about it, when is the last time that you were able to binge or gorge yourself on something, say, like steak or broccoli or lard? You just sit and eat teaspoons and teaspoons of lard? No, we don't. So fat in of itself, I don't know that you can literally sit and be addicted to pure fat without anything else added to it. But you put fat with a carb, like donut, how many donuts can we eat? How many potato chips can we eat? You have a carb, you have fat, and then you added another substance in there, salt. And we just took our addictive potential over the top. So, top of page 27, but what is addiction? So, this is the definition from the American Society of Addiction Medicine. Addiction is a treatable, chronic medical disease involving complex interactions among brain circuits, genetics, the environment, and the individual's life experiences. People with addiction use substances or engage in behaviors that become compulsive and often continue despite harmful consequences. So it's a brain illness, stuff that happens in there. The circuits are misfiring, they've been rewired to process in a different way, and it becomes out of our control. So it points out many of us certainly have an ongoing struggle with moderating certain foods despite experiencing harmful physical and mental consequences. So think about gorging yourself on a food and feeling so bloated and painful in your abdomen that you can't keep going. You're experiencing physical consequence and it's turning into, something you can't moderate. You couldn't moderate it, even though you knew you were going to get horrible side effects on the other end. You still did it anyway. You consume a whole bag of cookies, knowing, sorry, the light's getting dim. Sorry, I know it's not as good. We'll be better next week, hopefully. It sounds like there's more weather coming in, but get a whole bag of cookies. You eat that whole bag of cookies, and you experience a initial high, and then we crash. We're in a depression, and then we beat ourselves up for eating all those cookies. And what do we know now? We have mental consequences as a result of eating this food that we knew from the beginning that we couldn't moderate. But there's hope. And don't we love hope? Hope changes everything. Hope is how we change our lives. And hope is in that addiction is treatable. It is definitely a treatable thing. We're going to go now into Uncope. And I've talked about Uncope before in a previous episode with Tia Reed. Go back and watch that. I may ask her to come back on after we're done with this book. She's the addiction specialist. But Uncope is kind of a tool to determine if you, in fact, have a carbohydrate, sugar addiction type thing. So it is, each letter stands for something, and let's just kind of go through them. So turn to page 28. We're going to do the uncoped screening. So a sweet can be defined as any carbohydrate such as pasta, bread, dessert, biscuit, fizzy drinks, ice cream, pizza, cereal, potatoes, rice, sweeteners, with or without fat. So basically, if that's a carb, if it turns to sugar or is sugar to start with, that's what it can apply to this. So starting with number one, the U in uncoped is unplanned use. So in the past year, have you ever eaten more sweets than you intended, or have you spent more time eating and using sweets than you intended to? Okay. I can't say in the last year I've done that, but there's been times in my life before I made the changes that, yes, I definitely spent more time eating them and ate more than I planned on. Number two, the N is neglected. Have you ever neglected some of your usual daily responsibilities due to using sweets or overeating? And then you initially might say, no, I have not neglected any of my things. It's not like I've let my kids starve or not have things that they need just so I could go eat. But think of it this way. Has there been a time when you knew you were going to be late for work? You had to be at work at a particular time, started at 8 o'clock, and you choose to go by McDonald's and get that Frappuccino anyways, or Starbucks or wherever it is. You chose to go ahead and do that because you needed You needed that sugar that you may have been saying the caffeine, but it's probably more the sugar that you were needing. Have you ever eaten to the point, that unplanned use, where you were bloated and uncomfortable that you had to call out of work the next day because you were physically sick with IBS symptoms, diarrhea, constipation, whatnot? That falls under the neglect category. It doesn't just have to be neglecting things like your kids. It can be you're not doing your normal activities that you're supposed to. So C stands for cut down. Have you felt that you wanted or needed to cut down on eating sweets in the last year? I Not in the last year, but definitely before I made my lifestyle changes, I had thoughts of I need to cut back on this. But how do you cut back? Because that first bite is not enough. It just never is. First bite is too many, and a thousand's never enough. So the O, objected. Has anyone objected to you overeating sweets? This is like family or friends. Anyone has ever told you, said, hey, you're really going overboard. You're eating way too much. You need to cut back on that. That's more than enough. You've had your portion, you've had your share. Has a family member said, hey, I think you might have a problem with this? P, preoccupied. Have you ever found yourself preoccupied and wanting sweets, or found yourself thinking a lot about sweets? So waking up in the middle of the night, that cake's still in there from the night before, from Thanksgiving, or you know that that pie's in there that Aunt somebody made and it's wonderful, but I really am supposed to be doing this work, but that pie, that would be really good. That would make my brain feel really good. I could focus better if I would just go have that pie and be done with it. Or it's constantly wondering, I've just finished eating. What am I going to eat next? What's my next meal? What's my next snack? What's my next drink? All of those things is preoccupation with food. And then the E, emotional discomfort. Have you ever used sweets, food, to relieve emotional discomfort such as fatigue, irritation, sadness, anger, tiredness, boredom? I'm 100% guilty of that one. 100%. Not in the last year. Once again, things have changed, but at one point in my life, 100% guilty of that one. So you're supposed to add up your yeses in this, in your 1 through 6. How many yeses did you get? And if you got a 0 or a 1, you're a rare creature. Congratulations. You can eat that sugary food on occasion and never feel worse for it. You can eat that sugary food and take it or leave it. Don't need another bite. 2 bites is enough. I was never that person. Congratulations to you. If you had a score of 2, you may be on the border of having some issues. You could tip in here and there. We call these people harmful users, being like, on that occasion, you know that this food's going to do bad things to you, but you consume it anyways. Just like if you binge drink, you know that that's going to do bad things to you, but you do it anyways. You move on with that. So those are harmful users, but most of the time, those people can stop at some point. They're able to kind of draw their line in the sand and say, I'm not going, or take a time of abstinence from it and not have a problem. But at any point, you never know when you might switch over and all of a sudden you're not a harmful user, you're moving into the next one. Each time could be a slippery slope. So a score of 3 to 6 in this book, she's saying, welcome to the tribe. Yep, we got some problems with sugar, we got some problems with carbohydrates. We might as well own up to it and say, this is me, and identify with it, because then we can start treating it. Which foods seem to be addictive? So not all foods are created equal. We kind of already knew that, and that especially comes to their addictive qualities. There was a study in 2015, a study was done in America in which foods were kind of ranked and listed as problematic. It wasn't surprising that the foods high in sugar and fat and highly processed were the main ones on this list. So when you looked at this list of 10 things, did anything strike you as strange? Did it surprise you what was on this list? Or did you identify with this list and go down through there and say, yep, 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 yep? What I did when I looked at this list is I went out and I wrote PF or C beside it, between protein, fat, and carbohydrate, and what did each one have. And so pizza, it's the trifecta. It's got protein, fat, and carbohydrate, all of them, chocolate, fat, and carb. Crisp, that's like a cookie, I think. Remember, this book was written in England. It's got fat and carb. Biscuits most of the time have a fat and carb, or strictly carb. Ice cream, fat and carb. Chips, fat and carb. Cheeseburgers, fat and carb and protein. Fizzy drinks like your soda, that's pretty much straight sugar. Your cake, fat and carb. And then cheese. Did cheese surprise you? Because cheese is something we often allow on the low carb diet, but there's often people who it's a trigger food and they can't eat cheese because it makes them want to eat more, or they intend to eat a small amount of cheese and then it goes above and beyond, and they can't stop their intake from it. And if I was to guess as to why that is, I mean, it is the fat content. Fat can be addictive, but a lot of times we do process it, add other flavors and other things to it, like salts and stuff like that. But it may also be what we pair it with. Mm, Not many times do we just sit down with blocks of cheese. It's like cheese and crackers or macaroni and cheese, something else that we're pairing it with. That is a carb. So let's skip on over to page 30. Let's go down to that second paragraph. A very important fact to understand, as I mentioned before, is that starchy foods high in carbohydrates, such as bread, cereals, pasta, rice, digest down very quickly to glucose. So, glucose molecules all linked together, breaking down to glucose. So, an addiction to bread or pizza can still be understood as an addiction to sugar. Starch is sugar molecules holding hands with each other, just plain and simple. So, which foods are causing you the most problem? Well, everybody's going to be different. So, you have to ask yourself, what can you just not moderate and habitually overeat despite your best intention? You mean to have one and you have four. You mean to have one and you have five. You mean to have a slice and you have six slices. Everybody's going to be different with those foods. You have to know yourself on that one. Be aware of exactly which foods are problematic for you, and that's the key to your fork in the road. And maybe it's time to make a list. So let's look at these three little tidbits from people speaking. So Anna, she's talking about eating a whole bag of sugar icing mix with water when she was pregnant with her first child. But did you notice her history? She was a drug user, and she gave up drug use to have a healthy pregnancy. But that quickly transferred, that addiction transferred over to sugar addiction. In Dave's story, I needed to eat several cookies before I got to the shower each morning. The shame of walking down to get them and having to walk back up the stairs with my fix before being able to start getting ready. Shame. There's a lot of addiction. Any addiction has shame that goes with it, but food addiction definitely has shame with it. And then Benton's story. She was young and hiding and sneaking, and hiding is definitely a sign of addiction. And if you're hiding and trying to eat food when no one else is around, then you're hiding the packages. We might have an addiction issue. So how can foods be addictive? And I say I marked all over this page. And I think it's important. So if you have the book, I want you to go back and read this page and maybe read it a couple of different times so that you understand it. How can foods be addictive? We have to have food to live. So it doesn't make sense. Why would something that is essential to life be something that is addictive? Drugs, alcohol, not essential to life. Well, we have to look at it from an evolutionary perspective. The ability to overeat came so that we could survive. So think when we were hunter gatherers, when we didn't have the ability to preserve foods and take them into other seasons. So in autumn and in spring, when fruits and vegetables and things like that were very high, they would trigger that fruit, that carb, that sugar would trigger that endocannabinoid center of our brain. The hunger signal would be turned off and we would be triggered to eat more. Why? To store body fat because winter's coming. And when winter is coming, we got to have something to burn because it's going to take a lot of fuel to go kill something. And then we got to cook it and then we got to eat it and store it. And that's all 100% protein at that point, protein and fat without the carb. So evolutionary, we were triggered to store body fat during times when harvest was coming in and things like berries and stuff like that were plentiful. The only problem is today we're not our ancestors anymore. Food is everywhere. It is year round. You can eat foods out of season and who knows where they came from. And so we are habitually and constantly in a state of fat storage because we're constantly eating things that our body evolutionarily did not eat year round. So it's our modern food environment. Food is everywhere instead of those few months. Middle of the page, food today is hyper palatable and designed to be that way. So we eat more of it. The food scientists literally have studied the bliss point, the point where that food makes you go, "Dadgum, this tastes good and I want more of it." So they've studied it and figured out just how much salt, sugar, and fat we need to hit that point that makes us want to come back and eating more. And every day, our culture, we're eating fake food. Think about it. Breakfast cereal didn't come off of a tree. We didn't pick it right off of a plant. A snack bar didn't come off a tree. We didn't pick it off of a plant. We didn't pull it off of an animal. These are fake foods. These are food substances that we have created and put there. And the food scientists have figured out what it takes just to hit that bliss point. But yet, this way of eating is normalized. These fake food, that's the normal. It's normal to have a Eggo for breakfast and then to have a pizza for lunch and chicken nuggets and fries for dinner. But none of that resembles food that came off this earth. So, just like the cigarette industry before them, the food industry spends countless millions on suppressing the anti sugar message and funding favorable science. So, they're suppressing the message that this is addictive in addition to making it more addictive. There's a book out there called Sugar, Fat, Salt. I read it. I don't 100% agree with everything that's in there, but it's got some eye-opening information about the processed food industry and how they basically hijacked us and we're stuck and we're on a road that is a scary road for in the future. So recovery requires a whole new attitude to nutrition. We have to come to terms with the fact that we don't need carbohydrates. So if you've been a weight client, you've heard my video, you know that there are no essential carbonic acids. There are no official carboproteins. There are essential fatty acids that come from fat, and there are other essential things that come from protein, like amino acids. There's nothing essential in a carb. And people say, oh, no, 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 you need sugar to live. Well, yes, but your liver is really good about making just the right amount of sugar that you need. It can do that for you. And you only need about a teaspoon of sugar in your body at one time. That's how much is in your blood, or how much should be in your blood if you're not diabetic and you're a healthy person. We have to come to terms with saturated fat is not bad for us. If you start looking at the science, take out Nina Chaichow's book, Big Fat Surprise, and read that and learn that, all right, fat is really not the demon. It's what we did to the fat and what we added to the fat. And salt is not the enemy. We need salt. It's essential. It's part of our blood. If you get off on salt, guess what happens? Your heart stops. It's not a good thing. And we don't need to eat 15 small meals in a day. And that boils down to the hormone of insulin, and you're constantly spiking insulin, and insulin makes you store body fat. So let's get on over to page 32, and I'm going to try to speed up because I know you guys are probably getting tired of hearing me talk at this point. Remember, if you have questions, you can try to post them, and I will try to get to them. Or if you have comments, feel free to post those as well. So we go to the physiology of addiction. So when we're treating addiction, we have to rewire the brain. We have to make it think different because it's been trained. I'm stressed, sugar. I'm feeling boredom, sugar. I am feeling tired, sugar. It's already, and we have to retrain that. So the brain transmitter involved in motivation and reward is dopamine. The primitive reward center in the brain lights up in response to sugar, releasing the dopamine. So you give sugar, it gives you dopamine release, it lights up, and it's, oh man, that's good. I want another one. So we're then motivated to repeat the behavior that lit up the dopamine release. So that's why many of our new weight medications that are out there are targeting the dopamine center of the brain. The medicine Qsymia has topiramate in it, which targets the dopamine center of the brain. Also, the medication Contrave has Wellbutrin and naltrexone. Both of those target the dopamine and the endocannabinoid center of the brain. They target the addiction center of the brain. So I don't understand how, if the medicines we're using to treat obesity are targeting the addictive center of the brain the same way drugs and alcohol medicines treat that, and are the same medicines we use for drug and alcohol, how sugar cannot be an addiction and food cannot be an addiction. But I guess that's for another story. So mid-page, your brain remembers the cues, the smells, the sounds, the colors associated with getting the hit. You are driven to repeat the experience in the presence of those cues. So you smell that bread cooking, you want to eat it. You smell the cookies baking, you want to eat it. You see a commercial with a luscious brownie on there with dripping chocolate, you want to eat it. Just hearing me say these words makes you want to eat it. Those are all cues that are there. The brain also protects itself against these strategically high levels of dopamine. So it's being, after we've taken in so many hits of these sugar food, processed foods, the brain's like, I gotta protect myself. This is becoming too much. The dopamine center is getting over processed. So what does it do? It reduces the number of available receptors for dopamine. So when it cuts back on the receptors, it takes even more to get that dopamine high because there's less receptors and you got to throw more at it to get them all full. So the next time you need a bigger piece of cake or you need that second biscuit to get the same result that you did from that first one. I hope you can see that the brain reducing its dopamine receptors is definitely not a good thing over time. And why is this not a good thing? It's because it causes depression. There are three hormones that go into controlling our mood and cause and depression: serotonin, norepinephrine, dopamine. Our main. There's multiple others, but those are our main ones. And when the brain is reducing the receptors to dopamine, you can't take in as much dopamine. Depression ensues. And then what are we doing? We're using our food substances to treat our depression that the food substances caused. So addicts focus more and more on getting their hit, but it comes harder and harder. The focus becomes just getting through the day without withdrawal symptoms. So you've had your hit, you've lit up, and then we're going down. We're starting to get jittery. We're starting to get shaky. We're starting to get hangry. We're getting low blood sugar. All of these are signs of the withdrawal from the food. So let's go to page 33, and up at the very top, I put in big letters to myself, read this. So I want us to read through this paragraph. I think it's really important. Dopamine is the reward and motivation transmitter, whereas another chemical, serotonin, signals comfort and well-being. Antidepressants work by making serotonin more available in the brain. When we eat sugar and carbohydrate, the body releases the hormone insulin from your pancreas gland. Insulin's job is to get the sugar out of the bloodstream, where a raised blood sugar, as in type 2 diabetes, does damage over time, and into the muscle, liver, and fat. So it shoves sugar out of the bloodstream into cells of the body. When insulin is high, as after a carby meal or snack, tryptophan, an amino acid from food, can pass from the blood into the brain more easily. Probably remember tryptophan from Thanksgiving. Everybody thinks it's the turkey, whatever. But tryptophan is then converted to serotonin. So in short, when we eat sugar, on top of the dopamine hit we already described, we get a boost of serotonin and a feeling of well-being and comfort. Most people recognize that sugary foods will lead to these feelings and can start to use food for emotional reasons. However, the brain will also downregulate the serotonin receptor, meaning over time we need more sugar to get the same effect. So not all depression is caused from sugar and foods, but I definitely think it is made worse. And there are some cases that when you remove this addiction, the moods stabilize, the moods improve. And there's a whole movement in psychiatry right now, the metabolic theory of mental health. Dr. Christopher Ballmer's kind of heading this, and it's legit, guys, that these foods that we're eating, they're controlling our moods and worsening things. Let's go to the middle of the page. We're left depleted emotionally at a biological level, but also at a physiological level and behaviorally. People suffer from aversion, physical withdrawal symptoms when they can't access sugary foods. Have you had some of these before when you're getting hangry? Shakiness, irritability, sleep problems, headache, fatigue, nausea are common experience, but resolve on consumption of something that is high in carbohydrate, getting your sugar fix. All right, that's a lot. Go back and read those sections again. That's about the brain chemistry and whatnot. But let's get down here at the very bottom of page 33. You need to act your way out of addiction over time with new habits because you can't think your way out of it. You can't just hope it's going to get better. You can't just think, I'm going to moderate it, I'm going to take it down, I'm going to eat less. You have to take action. You have to take steps, and you have to act your way out of addiction. That is abstaining from those things. And it may be that other people notice it before you. You know, in Georgia's story on the top of page 34, it was her partner that noticed how preoccupied she was with food. She didn't think she had a problem until her partner made note about it. Let's look at hunger and how it comes back to that hormone insulin. It's imperative. Because of its let me just start over. Just getting back to the important hormone insulin, because of its comparative to the drive down. Oh, it's basically driving down sugars. Sorry, I was having a hard time getting through that sentence. So the high of eating the sugar is often all too brief because insulin suppressing and getting that sugar out, your blood sugar crashes, and then you feel that hungry feeling again, and even mild anxiety starts to creep in and you feel anxious. So we are, in fact, genius hybrid engines. I love thinking of the body like a hybrid engine. We're built to burn two different fuels for energy. We sure can burn sugar, and that's what most of us have burned for the last 100 years or so, but we can also burn fat for fuel as effectively, if not more effectively, than we burn sugar. However, sadly, for the carb addicted, most amongst us, the highest levels of insulin block our ability to burn our fat. So if you're constantly eating carbs, you're constantly stimulating insulin, and that insulin is blocking your ability to burn your body fat. That's why when you come as a new patient, we give you the example of the pizza and the French fries and the chicken and the broccoli. So the pizza and the French fries, the chicken and broccoli, same amount of calories. If you're restricting down low enough, you are going to burn some body fat either way, but you're going to burn a whole lot more body fat if you're doing the chicken and broccoli because it doesn't stimulate the insulin as much, and you get back to burning your body fat faster on the same amount of calories. But also, it affects our hunger levels. So a low carb diet enables us, after a period of adjustment, to become a fat burner, utilizing our fat reserves and feeling less hungry because hunger's not getting stimulated. You're not needing that rebound hit from that. The bottom line, if you are a carb addict, you will not be able to free yourself from the hold of certain foods until you acknowledge the addiction. You say, it's true. I got it. It's me. The bedrock of recovery from any addiction is complete abstinence. Not going back and having it once, not giving us an excuse because it's a holiday or birthday or anything of that nature. It is complete abstinence. Look at that highlight at the bottom of 34. Just one small piece, a cheat date, or only a weekend will not work for the carbohydrate addict. Moderation is a mythical unicorn. This isn't about a lack of willpower. Know that. You're not a weak person. This is not just about willpower or the personal failing. It's about a physical and mental addiction. This acceptance is what I call the fork in the road moment. When you realize that these foods are addictive and you have an addictive problem, that is your fork in the road. And you can either choose to continue to live in bondage of these foods, or you can choose to go a different direction. The road won't always be easy, but it's the right road. It's freeing. It's what gets you your life back. Look at Anna's story. Unlike other things, I don't have to be around drugs or alcohol. I have to eat. It took me about 6 months to completely abstain from the drug foods. So it's not something that happens overnight. There's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be part of the journey. Progress, not perfection. Keep working. Every day is a new day to make a better difference. We all know people who aren't carb addicts. We all know them. It's the people that can eat something once and walk away and never have it again. Doesn't bother them. They seem like alien creatures to us. Some people have no need to fully abstain from sugar, so they don't understand your need to fully abstain from sugar, and they will shove it in your face. They will tempt you with it. They'll say, hey, it's just one bite. You can have it this one time. It's one bite's not going to hurt you. And that's the truth. One bite's not. It's the next bite and the next night and the next bite that you can't control from the one bite that you just took. Some other people will habitually overeat sugar and refined carbohydrates out of habit, and because it's so normal to our culture. They may be harming their health and could do with cutting down on sugary processed foods, but they're not sugar addicts. So they're the harmful user people from when we did the uncope earlier. They know that they need to, that's going to do bad things, and that they should cut back, and they can cut back. They can stop. But then there's others, the carb addict group. You can't. That one bite is kind of like game over, and you're off track, and before you know it, we've gained 15 20 30 pounds or whatnot, and we're looking for that next meal and the next, and we're hiding foods and things like that. Okay, We made it through chapter one. Took a little bit longer than I'd like. Thank you for those of you that stuck with me. For those of you that watch it on the replay, if you have questions, please post it. I'll try to get through them throughout the week. If you haven't gotten the book yet, it is Fork in the Road by Jenn Unwin. Next week, we're going to go over your passport to recovery. Quick reminder that if you are a lady and you're looking at coming to the Nourished event on March the 9th, please go to Eventbrite, look at the other links on Facebook and Instagram. Get those tickets now because sales will end before the event. You have to have a ticket to go, and I want everybody to experience this. It's going to be a great event, and I can't wait to spend this time with you. So until next week, everybody, be well, be safe, be warm, and eat healthy.